So once again, my name is Nick Iries, and I am going to be talking about the welding facility we have here over at OpenWorks. So this is our welding space like we had talked about a little earlier. We have 4 fantastic welding machines. These are both MIG and TIG machines, so they can switch over depending on what process is needed. So today we're going to talk a little bit about MIG welding. MIG welding is one of the easier forms of welding to learn. It stands for metal inert gas, and it is very user-friendly and can be learned in one class. So our MIG welders that we have here are Lincoln Power MIGs 210. They run on 110 power or 220. So they're also a very good piece of equipment that would be appropriate for a garage shop or maybe somebody doing not quite as heavy duty welding as some professionals. To start with this machine, we're gonna make sure everything's plugged in, which is including the gas. So we have 2 different kinds of gases over here. We have the argon CO2, which is used for MIG welding, and the straight argon, which is used for TIG welding. In this case, we're doing MIG welding, so we're turning on the mixed gas. 1, 2. And you don't have to open the tanks all the way, just a couple turns will do. The gas is taken care of, the welder is plugged in, we're ready to turn it on. So we turn it on, give it a second to come to life, and for this screen to come and tell you how to adjust it. So you start with the home button, MIG steel, that's what we want. So then you push on this. This is the 75-25 gas mix, that's what we want. Push again, the diameter of wire, which is the wire that feeds through your MIG gun. So 0.03 is what we're looking for. We're welding pretty thin pipe, square tubing today, so I'm gonna leave it at 14 gauge. So press that. Then it gives you this screen. So this screen gives you the wire speed, which is 184 inches per minute, and the volts, which we're at 18. I'm gonna lower the volts because our material is pretty thin, and I'm gonna just lower the wire speed. The welding flash is about twice as bright as the sun and won't only really hurt your eyes, but it'll also give you a wicked sunburn. So it's a real good idea to cover up anytime you're doing MIG welding. So OpenWorks has gloves and jackets and all the safety stuff that you need for doing any of the processes here in the metal shop. So once you feel like you got everything you need, you got some gloves on, not too much exposed skin. I'm also wearing closed-toed shoes, which is always what you want to do here in the metal shop. These are steel-toed boots, which aren't absolutely required, but it's a good idea to have it in a metal shop. So this is an auto-darkening welding helmet. We have several different kinds here at OpenWorks, and these welding helmets have several different settings on them. So once you get started, you can see the settings with the sensitivity, which you want as sensitive as possible. The shade is really important, so you want it either 12 or 13 shade. And delay, you don't want any delay, so you lower that as much as possible. So then over here it says weld grind. Sometimes this is at different places in your welding helmet. So we're gonna be welding, so I put it on welding. You can test it, good to go. All right, so these welding helmets have adjustments right here that open and close the strap around your head. You want it to be pretty snug, so we put it on, and then we turn this dial to where it's snug on my head. That's pretty important because sometimes your hands are gonna be busy and you wanna be able to put the welding helmet down. So if my hands are busy, I can just easily throw the helmet down a little bit. There are many, many advanced levels of welding, and this shop, where it might have some of the equipment, to start, you gotta really keep in mind the ground. So these welders run on electricity. They're called arc welders, which when that trigger gets pulled, the electrical current runs through the table, through your work, and through this tiny little wire. So when I pull the trigger, it engages the machine, pushes the wire out, and turns on all the electrical arc. So when those things are happening, your wire, once it touches your material that has the electric current running through it, it will then liquefy that material. So a lot of people are like, oh, wow, well then am I gonna get electrocuted? You're not usually gonna get electrocuted unless you're like standing in a puddle of water or something like that. Because that electric current is shielded, this whole trigger is shielded, and it is only going through that tiny little wire and through the arc, or through the ground and into your work. So that current is gonna connect at that little point when you pull that trigger. So what we're gonna go over is how to spot weld or tack weld your material together, how to run full beads, and how to generally combine two pieces of metal using several different welding techniques. All right, so I'm gonna start by putting two small tacks to hold these pieces of material together. I throw my shield down and I hold steady. All right, welding. That's one tack. This is the other tack, welding. So you can now see these two pieces of metal are connected. They're not welded over here, so now I'm gonna flip it over and weld over here. Now to do this, I'm gonna then pull the trigger down so it's a consistent speed, and I'm gonna stay very grounded with one hand down, and I'm gonna pivot off that one hand and use it as stability. So I have these two pieces. So what I'm gonna be doing is weaving from one piece to another in a zigzag-like motion. All right, welding. So in this instance, I'm using square tubing, which is a really nice material. It's great for making all types of tables, benches, all kinds of furniture, or like structural things for your house or your shop. So I'm gonna weld it on a 90 degree, just like that. So one thing that you gotta keep in mind is preparing your material to be welded. I'm gonna go over to the grinder and do that real quick. Okay, so to put the bevel on this material, I'm gonna use the belt sander. Turn it on, stand to the side. So you can see, I didn't take away too much material, but just enough for the weld. So what I'm trying to really do is, so here's one part of the material, here's the other part of the material. Now what I'm doing is taking a little bit of that material away, so then when that material is gone, I can fill it with weld, which is giving you a better penetration weld. So then sometimes you want to grind that surface entirely clean, which would make the surface, looking from the profile of the material like this, nice and flat, but still give you a fair amount of weld material. So if you don't weld prep it, your material looks like this, and when you weld into it, your weld blobs up like this, which is fine when you're not gonna clean the surface entirely flat, and you only get a little bit of penetration. So then when you grind the surface flat, all you really have is this little bit of weld, which isn't nearly as strong as you want the connection to be. So now that you can see, I beveled both the edges, preparing them for the weld. Now I'm gonna hold them in place. Another great way to hold them in place is some welding magnets that we have here at the school. And these welding magnets have several different sides to them, which allow you to hold the material in either 90 degrees or whatever angle you're really looking for. Before making the full pass or the full weld, I'm gonna just tack this piece together a little bit. All right, welding. All right, so this is nice and tacked. I'm gonna move the welding magnets away. The magnets can sometimes affect the welding arc that goes through your current and through your table. So the further away they are, the slightly better your weld's gonna be. All right, so I'm gonna do a full weld on this. Once again, I have my hand nice and stable against the table, and I'm using this to control my entire full range of motion. I would like to not have to stop and reposition. So it's very helpful to have your hand as a stability, but it also being able to move your entire weld. So sometimes, as you can see, I just burnt right through this material, which is a really good example to show you how to change the welding settings to relate to the machine or the welding situation that you're doing. So you can see how this was a pretty quick little weld. So I'm welding on a flat surface. It's very easy. It's easy to move around. It's stable, and it's a pretty solid weld. I'm happy with that. So the way I'm going to be doing this vertical weld is going from the top to the bottom. It's really a little easier to do that than the bottom to the top because you're kind of supporting your liquid puddle during your weld. All right. All right, so you can see this weld was pretty consistent, it was even, and I'm really trying to stay in the middle of the crack in between the two pieces of material. So MIG welding, like I said earlier, is all about the electricity running through the material and creating that arc. So when we're welding, we're really trying to look for that arc, which is liquefying the material. So you have like a puddle of liquefied material. So here's one piece of material. So what we want to do is weld this seam all together. So what we're looking for is creating a full weld, which is a puddle of liquid metal. That liquid metal is what you're really looking for. So it's very important for you to be able to see that puddle, because that little ball of energy, which is then creating the puddle, is really the whole universe of a welder. So if you can control that and move it in the direction to cover both pieces of material, then that's a good weld. So that's what I want you to look for when I weld now. I am gonna take wire and try to start it directly in the middle of my weld, and then I'm gonna zigzag, like a zigzag pattern, from one material to the next, back and forth. I'm kind of weaving from one mother material to the other. And I'm keeping that liquid puddle all together, which will go from this to this. Welding. So you can see as I'm weaving back and forth, I'm staying consistent, taking my time, and staying in that puddle of liquid metal, back and forth. And I'm really just trying to control that puddle of liquid metal. I'm staying consistent, you can hear it. The noise of your weld is a really good indicator for how the weld is going. There we go. As you could see that weave, you're kind of seeing those little puddles of metal layering over each other. And that's a pretty decent weld. The welding class is really about building skills as opposed to an actual project. Now, we can talk about actual projects when you come in and take the class, or we can talk about how to execute them throughout the class. But really, we try to focus on the skill building. And one of the projects is to write your name, make a little name tag. So that's what I'm gonna do in this piece of metal right here. All right, welding. All right, there you go. So fun little projects like this are really what I try to do during the welding class to not only have something to take home, but also build your skills. Well, now that we've done all the fun stuff and we kind of got into welding a little bit, and there's a bit of a starter course in how to use these MIG welding machines, now we have to clean up a little bit. So first thing to do is take your helmet off, put it wherever you guys keep helmets. We got gloves here and the jacket. Then to shut the machine off, you simply turn it off there and you're good to go. I usually like to take the gun, make one big loop and set it right there. And here at OpenWorks, we usually go over to the wall and shut the gas off, and then walk back over here and shut the tanks off. So in a community space like this, it's really a good idea to take care of the shop and try to think about others and reset the shop as much as you can. Come take a class, come watch some of our videos, and please let me know if you have any questions. Once again, my name is Nicholas Iries, and I'd like to say thank you for taking some time and watching these videos. Hopefully we come to a point where we can do all this in person again. And for any more information, just go to openworksbmore.org, and you can look up all the classes as well as the wood shop and the 3D printing labs and the whole slew of fantastic resources this place provides. So thank you once again, and take care.